ring if you're ready to care. Oh, let's talk power, let's talk speed. Hosted by the one and only Wetoodeep. Turn it up loud, feel the power in your seat. This is Slapping Me, yes, Slapping Me.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Slapping Meat Community Show. I'm your host, Wetoodeep, and we have a fantastic episode planned for you, as always. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. I hope you enjoyed last week's episode. If you looked at the video format, I don't know. I think it looks a little bit better to do it this way rather than to go to the YouTube and just have the audio. I think to make sure that both audiences have a sound product. We're just going to continue doing this way. I know I said I was going to do a test, but I think I like doing it this way. So we're just going to dive right on into the show. Just like I said, like, share, subscribe. If you're listening on audio, follow or subscribe, whatever the platform you use. Wording is for that. Leave us a review or a thumbs up or whatever it is. I personally, Wetoodeep here, will personally just love if you could do that for us, and I appreciate every single one of you guys who listen. So just like we always do, we're going to start the show with some Wetoodeep Pro Wrestling. And we are moving in to season number 4 of this, right? And I say this, the first episode we did it with season 1 was a quick little introductory episode, season, let's say, of here's the roster, here's how we get to our champions, introduce everything, right? Season 2 is now, another quick season, but we sort of formulate the very bad, the very negative impact of GM Bennett Randleman and asserting that he has the control and he's going to use it and manipulate control of the roster to satisfy him, right? Season 3 that we did last week was longer, was a longer season, more episodes, and just continued to grow through that, right? So now we're in season 4, and the purpose of this season is to show that the locker room is recognizing that Bennett Randleman represents access. Not necessarily access to championships only, but just access to success, right? And they're learning and starting to begin to weaponize under that understanding. So you'll see that through this thing, and I really just want to start to push this idea of Bennett Randleman thinking he's too smart and that he's untouchable, and start to see that, right? Because we're watching television, right? I've always said that if I were to do something like this, it's going to be episodic, it's going to be seasonal, it's going to be something that is a good television product, and not necessarily a good wrestling product. That it's Wetoodeep Pro Wrestling, a TV show centered around a pro wrestling promotion, right? And so that's what this is. So with season 4, we start with Dominic in the ring with Bennett Randleman, interrupted by Dragunov, Ricky Saints, and Ethan Page, who all want the world championship, right? And Ethan sort of makes the argument that, I helped Dominic, I should get an opportunity, right? And Bennett Randleman sort of shuts that down and says, just because you helped doesn't make you a contender, right? And so what I also want to start doing with this season is showing, the crowd, as if they were to watch this, that Bennett Randleman is a guy who's very transactional. He's very, I use you as long as you are beneficial to me, and no longer than that. And so that's what that is, right? So we start with that opening segment, right? We then move into like a backstage segment. Britt Baker, like I said, she's the first one to recognize how to manipulate Bennett Randleman. Now, granted, up to this point, I don't think Britt's won a single match, and so she's frustrated, but she recognizes, I can manipulate him into putting me into situations where I can be successful. So she, as Bennett Randleman starts, well, again, remember, we one-take these, so it's not like transitional cameras. It's Bennett Randleman finishes this segment, and he's walking back to his office in a take, right? And it's all sort of one take, not different segments per se, right? So as he's walking back to his office, Britt sees him backstage and just starts to like casually flirt with him, right? It's not desperate, but it is a casual flirt, right? Something that Liv Morgan sort of sees, recognizes, and notices. So we get the first match, Willow Nightingale versus Sol Ruca. Willow picks up the win, and we start to get a slow burn feud with these two. We then get a second match that happens immediately following with Oba Femi versus some enhancement talent, with Trick Williams interrupting before the start of the match to watch from commentary. Obviously, Oba Femi's in a squash match. He dominates. Trick sort of is sarcastic in his applause, right? And then we get our main event, Ethan Page versus Dominic Mysterio in a non-title match, where Ethan Page almost wins. Dom barely survives. And as Bennett sort of raises Dom's hand to congratulate him, he sort of stares down Ethan Page longer than necessary, one of those awkward stare downs, right? And that's how we sort of close the episode to start the season. We start episode 2 in Bennett Randleman's office, where Ethan Page is there, sort of confronting him like, hey, I didn't help Dom for free. And Bennett Randleman sort of shakes it off, says, you should have read the fine print when you were deciding to make the deal. We then get a announcement, as Ethan Page is storming out, Rhea Ripley storms in. She gets officially named the next challenger. As she sort of walks out of the office sort of smiling, you could see Megan Bain sort of in the distance in the shadow sort of watching that happen. We then get the first match, Bianca versus Harley Cameron. Of course, Bianca's going to dominate. She cuts a promo basically saying, I'm done waiting. And she sort of intentionally compliments Bennett Randleman, who's sitting at commentary. Again, another person recognizing, maybe if I flirt a little bit. And again, Liv kind of notices what's going on here. Another match, Trick Williams versus Leon Slater, in which Trick Williams wins. Oba attacks him afterwards. Now you start to get the feud going on, right? And then the main event is Britt Baker versus Willow. Britt cheats to win. with Bennett Randleman sort of accidentally but on purpose distracting the ref, in which Britt then sort of smiles at Bennett, that flirtatious smile, and Liv is then seen on camera sort of visibly annoyed. And again, that's how you end the show. Episode 3, you actually get a Women's World Championship match with Rhea versus Liv for the title. Rhea is winning. Looks like she's going to win the match, getting ready to set up Riptide when Liv ducks, referee takes a bump, and when the ref takes a bump, Megan Bayne comes out from underneath the ring, attacks Rhea, ref wakes up, Liv retains. Right, so now we are building Rhea and Megan, which is now a personal feud, right? Match 2, Trick versus Oba again, big fight feel, and it sort of ends in a double countout after a lot of chaos. They fight through the crowd. It takes a few minutes for them to sort of get broken up. We follow it. They even go all the way through the locker room and eventually outside where the camera sort of loses the feed because they go outside. And commentary sort of explaining, the cameras can only go so far before we lose them, so they can't leave the building, right? Cameras then turn back around to come back towards the ring and backstage. You again see more openly flirtatious behavior from Britt to Bennett Randleman, to which Liv then confronts her this time, and Britt's sort of like, hey, relax, buddy guy. I'm just playing the game. I'm just playing the game. You hate the game, not the player, right? And again, that's sort of how we end that episode. Episode 4 then happens. Dragunov returns to TV, confronts Bennett Randleman, says, you know what, you hide behind your rules because you're afraid of me. Bennett sort of gets a little irritated. He says, you want me in a match? All right, you can have me in a match. In fact, at the pay-per-view, I'll make my in-ring debut against you, Ilya. Right? You can have me. Show me what you got, right? So then we get the matchups, a rematch between Willow and Soul. Soul wins with a roll-up, and we move on from that. Ricky Sage versus Ethan Page. Dom comes out and sort of returns the favor and helps Ethan win, but Ethan still demands a title match. He gets on the mic after the win and says, Dom, don't think that that's enough to repay what I did for you. I want an opportunity at your title. That's what I agreed to. Go backstage. Bianca again is flirting with Bennett. Liv sort of walks in mid-conversation. Tension's thick, kind of awkward. We've all been in this situation. And Liv just sort of turns and walks away. And that's how we end that episode. Right? He's being pulled in 3 different directions now, right? Episode 5 starts. Liv is the one starting this episode and with a promo. Notice how a lot of these episodes are sort of promo focused, right? That's how I would run my company, to be honest, right? Liv calls out Bianca. She basically accuses her of trying to manipulate Bennett Randleman. Bianca then turns around and says, you know what, I learned from the best. I learned from you, Liv. I learned from the best, right? So we then get the first match, Britt versus Kendall Gray. Britt wins. Bennett again out on ringside, comes in, congratulates her sort of like personally in the ring, what raises her hands, while Liv, who's sitting ringside with him, sort of glares at him, right? Match 2, Oba versus Javon Evans. Oba dominates and wins the match, to which Strickland comes and attacks him after the match. And then our main event, Rhea Ripley versus Megan Bayne, ends in a double DQ. Absolute chaos. Security fails to retain them and break them apart, and they start fighting backstage. And that's sort of how we end that. as they leave the arena and the cameras can't go that far, right? We then start episode 6, Liv and Bennett in the ring. She's sort of confronting him. You're being manipulated. This is what's happening. Bianca interrupts, says, let's settle this, right? Bennett Randleman then announces, you know what, Bianca, you're right. Liv versus Bianca 3, no holds barred. It's announced for the pay-per-view. We then get Willow versus Britt. Willow wins. No, Bennett Randleman sort of taking care of Liv, so he's not at ringside, can't help. Britt sort of is annoyed that she lost because she was sort of on a win streak, right? And you get a non-title match after, Dom versus Ricky Saints. Ethan Page comes back to help Dom, and Bennett Randleman notices that, and we close as Bennett's walking backstage. We close the show with a Dragunov sneak attack, busts Bennett Randleman open. He's bleeding, and this is the first time he really starts to look vulnerable. We then do the go-home show with a Bennett Randleman promo. He appears, he's all taped up, bandages, stitches, and he says, you know what, you didn't break me, because you can't break me. And Dragunov sort of appears on the Tron. The screen says, no, I already have broken you. And so we then sort of end. We have a few matches, but I'm a type of person, go home shows or promos, and here's why you should watch this show. And so a lot of it would be like a review of what has happened so far. Here's why you should watch the pay-per-view. Type thing. And so we get the final match announcements. No holds barred, Liv versus Bianca, Bennett versus Ilya Dragunov, Dom versus Ethan Page, Rhea versus Megan, and Oba versus Trick. And then we go to the season 4 pay-per-view. We start with the opening, Bennett Randleman sort of taping up his wrist. Bianca's fixing the braid. Liv is watching Bianca through a monitor. Dom is clutching the title, right? And we see all the people getting ready for their matchups. We get a voiceover from Bennett Randleman. Says, people think that control means force. No, control is trust. That's misplaced. Right? Something like that. Again, I'm in control is essentially what he's trying to say. Cut to black, pyro, begin the show. We start with Oba versus Trick. Trick is a little bit faster, a little bit more strategic, but Oba is more forceful. Now, I'm the type of person, as much as I like how they've been using Oba Femi, I think there's a cool, what I would use Oba Femi for isn't to be my champion, my ruler, right? I would use Oba Femi to be a monster, and he's just a big meaty man who slaps meat. That's what he's there for, right? And I would pair him up against Trick Williams, Braun Breaker, as I sign other big dudes specifically to go against Oba Femi to be a monster, right? Just pure force, right? So the finish, Trick's going for trick shot. Oba catches him, hits him with a massive power bomb, to which Oba Femi wins, right? We then go to Willow Nightingale versus Sol Ruka, athletic, emotional match. Sol goes for a springboard lariat type move, a springboard. It's not the Soul Snatcher, but it's a move off the ropes. Similar, and Willow counters it with a lariat, and Willow wins the aftermath. It's a nice competitive handshake, crowd involved, and it's just a match that elevates both women, right? When you're fighting the mid-card women's division, this is something, just as an aside, that I wish WWE would do more of, is not every match has to have a title or some sort of stipulation to it in the mid-card. Sometimes your mid-card matches can just be there to elevate women or the two wrestlers, right? So even in Law, Sol Ruka goes over because it's a nice competitive match. It is one of those things that AEW does do more often that I think people tend to look over. Right. Match 3, Rhea Ripley versus Megan Bayne. Again, just monsters unchained. Megan throws Rhea into a barricade. Rhea headbutts Megan repeatedly. The ref sort of loses control of the match. Rhea counters a slam from Megan, hits the riptide, and wins the match. Excuse me, you get Ethan Page finally gets his title opportunity. The debt comes due, right? Time to pay our debt, Dominic, is sort of the way this is built. Dominic sort of panics. Bennett's watching closely from the outside. Ethan sort of dominates, but Dom sort of escapes. That's the two different styles. And Bennett subtly distracts Ethan, ultimately allowing for a Liv to distract the ref. Dom low blows Ethan, hits a roll-up, and wins the match. To where Ethan sort of stares down Bennett Randleman, realizing I was never going to get paid what I was due. Right? Again, as Bennett Randleman's leaving, I said, I told you should have read the small print. You were never getting paid. I told you that, right? It's in the small print. So then Liv Morgan versus Bianca. 3, no holds barred. This is the match that everyone sort of remembers. And just a good match, right? And this literally would be no holds barred, right? A lot of times no holds barred in WWE or in AEW is just, we can be a little bit more extreme. But this literally would be, there's nothing illegal in this match. You can use whatever you want. You can do whatever you want. This means you could be a street fight. You can do whatever you want. That's what a no holds barred match is. There are no rules. Just got to win in the ring, right? And so weapons are used. There's blood, intense physical battle, right? And as excuse me, as Bianca hits the KOD through a table, pins Liv. There was a near fall kick out at 2.5, to which Liv then rolls outside of the ring, where she sort of slowly walks up to Bennett. Sort of with that flirtatious, look in her eye, right? Which is crazy. Just by the way, I have the first 10 seasons of this already pre-booked before I even started filming any of them. I just got carried away with it in my idea phase before I even announced it. So the first 10 seasons are already booked. But it's funny because I think it was B-Master who posted in the Discord about this, man, where's Bianca's, where's Montez at? Bianca's getting taken advantage of. Well, Bianca's trying to, Bianca's a strong boss lady. She could take care of herself. She don't need no man. But that did bring me the idea, maybe with season 11, we introduce a Montez Ford to the picture. We'll see how that goes, because we'll see how that goes as we go through the season. But anyway, the point of this is Bianca sort of trying to take care of business. Looks like she's going to flirt with Liv and sort of teasing Liv, getting her emotional. Bianca kisses Bennett. And Bennett doesn't pull away. Crowd's losing his mind. Bennett sort of hesitates again, doesn't pull away, but then realizes what's happening, and then sort of pushes Bianca. Or not pushes Bianca, but he sort of grabs Bianca, by the waist. And by the way, this is no holds barred, so there's tables everywhere, right? Like I mentioned. And so as Bennett sort of realizes what's happening, just sort of instinctually, he picks up Bianca. Everyone thinks he's sort of it's one of those romantic sort of pick up, grab her by the waist, sort of wrap her legs around you type pick up. And again, they're real slow burn at this, right? Think he's falling for Bianca now right in front of Liv, right? And Liv is sort of freaking out. What are you doing? And then boom. Bennett power bombs Bianca through a table. The crowd goes absolutely berserk. Then there's a silence. Liv sort of in shock. Bennett rolls Bianca back into the ring, looks at Liv and says, I told you I got you, right? Liv smiles, picks up Bianca just to make sure she's out, hits Oblivion, 1, 2, 3, Liv is still champion, right? Bianca comes back in. The lesson is really clear here. You can't outplay the system, right? So then you get to the main event. Bennett Randleman versus Ilya Dragunov. Bennett sort of comes out, no music. He's a brawler, right? That's sort of his style. He's a brawler. He announces as he's on his way out, you know what, this is going to be as well. No, anything goes, right? This is going to be what Dragunov, you can do whatever you want to me, right? But Bennett's also a previous wrestler, you know, he has some experience at this, right? He's not flashy, but he's smart, which would represent my actual style if I was a wrestler. I'm staying on the ground. I'm not doing all the extra flips and dives and all of that, right? That would be the way that I wrestled. It would be really smart and boring and logical wrestling. Right? Counters, leverage, painful attacks, joint manipulation stuff, right? But Dragunov is also very relentless, and he knows everything about pain as well, right? So Bennett avoids his strikes. He uses the ropes and the corners and his positioning. But Dragunov sort of just beats the living hell out of him, right? Slap after slap after slap, chop after chop, just beating the hell out of him. The crowd is sort of recognizing, you know, we don't like his morals. We don't like the way he runs the ship here. But Bennett's tough as nails, so they start to sort of like, they don't turn for him. They're definitely cheering for Dragunov. They're enjoying him getting beat. But you understand there's people that you don't like but you respect because they're tough, right? That's what this is, right? Bennett sort of gets that second wind. Dragunov survives, hits Torpedo Moscow, wins the match and pins Bennett Randleman. Dragunov is celebrating. Bennett sort of rolls outside, but he's bloody. He's bleeding, but he's smiling, right? Liv and Dom come to join him. Bennett grabs a microphone and says, you may have won, but I'm still in control. All right? And that's how we end season 4. So that is Wetoodeep Pro Wrestling. Now it's time to go in the ropes, where I want to talk about a few different things. The first thing is we're going to talk about Vengeance Day. And more specifically, my thoughts about it. And so I intentionally, as I watched it live, I did not take notes. Mainly because I wanted to see if the show itself was rememberable, right? There's some PLEs, some matches, some shows that you don't need to take notes. You just remember everything that happens. This was not one of those things. This was not one of those things. And so let's talk about the show. So we start with, and correct me if I'm wrong, I know, I think I remember this correctly in order. We start with Blake Monroe versus Jada Parker. And this is a street fight. Now, I'm going to be completely honest with you. I just necessarily didn't care about this story. I don't care about the street fight, didn't care about the feud. I like both of these women, but I definitely think that they should be in different places on the show. And what I mean by that is the main event scene in the women's division is too crowded. And what I mean by that is we have Blake Monroe, we have Jada Parker, we have Sol and Zarya and JC. And as of my opinion, JC Jane should not be champion. She should be on the main roster. In fact, everyone in that main event, because they came out during the show and had a little feud, I'm assuming I think it's the Houston show in a few weeks, where it's going to be a triple threat for the the women's championship. And I think all of Fatal Influence should be on the main roster. I think Sol and Zarya should be on the main roster in the mid card, or Sol possibly in the main event scene there because she's that good. But they're blocking people like Jada Parker, like Blake Monroe, who just have nothing really to do, right? And so they're fighting these useless side quests that don't really add anything to who they are, right? And so I just don't care that there was a street fight here. Was it a good match? Absolutely. Did I like that Blake Monroe won the match? Absolutely. Not afraid of it. I don't hate it. I think it's good. I think we're at a point with Jada Parker, though, where I don't know how much longer she can continue losing feuds. Right? I know the crowd likes her. She's a fan favorite, but I just don't know how much longer she can continue losing feuds and matches before we start to look at her and say, what is she even here for? Right? You then go to the second match, and Tony D'Angelo versus Dion Lennox, and I don't know if this was stipulated or whatnot. I don't remember, but essentially this thing starts outside of the ring in the parking lot, which was fun. I enjoyed it as it made their way to the ring. The match started. Tony D looked good. Dion Lennox had a performance of the year, of his career, one of the better matches that he had. Crazy to think a year ago at this time, I was at Vengeance Day in DC, and that's when Dark State came back, or not came back, but debuted. And to think about a little bit over a year ago, Dion Lennox was a little dork reading books, right? And now he's one of the bigger heels on the men's roster. But again, I personally don't care about Dark State. I just don't care. They're like vigilantes who try to, interrupt everything, and I'm sure they've been champions, but the gimmick doesn't make much sense to me. Dion Lennox sort of separated from it, right? But also this match it makes sense, the ending with Tony D winning, because it was very obvious, I believe, what they were doing. They were trying to set up Stand and Deliver with Tony D as the main guy going in as the challenger for the championship, right? And I'm fine with that. I am. I'm fine with that. Then we get the third match, Tatum versus Izzy. This was the only match I really cared about for this whole show. And this match was really good. This match surprised me for how good it was. Tatum Paxley, I think, is the most over woman on the roster. She just has that crowd connection. And she's good. I'm glad she won. Very great match. Very good story that was told between these two. And I can't wait to see where it goes and what's next. But Izzy Dame's also in one of those positions where, I don't know what more she can do. Where she's at on the roster. She should be in the main event, but is sort of blocked with so many people in line. Then you get the next match being the underground match, which I don't understand why we keep doing these things. They're never really good. This match lasted 7 minutes, and commentary was kind of confusing. with how they were trying to push Kalani Jordan, because they kept saying, oh, she's going to use her athleticism, and then she gets knocked out in 7 minutes. It makes I don't think anyone got over in this, right? I know Lola Vice didn't get over. Kalani didn't get over. Kalani took another loss. Lola, I mean, what good is this win if she's not fighting for titles at some point? So, I don't understand this match at all. Then you have the main event, Ricky Saints versus Joe Hendry, neither of which of the two are necessarily great in the ring. And so it wasn't the best match. It was decent. We knew Joe Hendry was probably going to win. And go into... Now, I think that there's a potential... This is a theory. I have no backstage information or anything like that. This is just a theory I thought of. What if Joe Hendry goes into Stand and Deliver on the 8th of August? Not August, damn. April. And the 8th of April, goes into St. Louis, Stand and Deliver, loses to Tony D, and then 2 weeks later, or 10 days later, answers Brock Lesnar's open challenge. I think that would be pretty interesting, just to say the least. And then so that's where I'm at with, like, I think this was a B+ show. Wasn't my favorite thing I've ever watched in wrestling. I saw someone say that they thought this was the best PLE WWE has done this year. And I don't know if I agree. We'll see at the end of the year what I think about. I'll be honest with you. I just don't know if I agree with that. So the last thing I want to talk about in the rope segment, there's more wrestling we'll talk about, because one of the things I was going to talk about, Kara asked the same exact question, so I'll save it for Kara's question. But the last thing I want to talk about is it has been what, 10 days since Danhausen has debuted in WWE? It's been like 10 days, right? In 10 days, Danhausen has me going from what are we doing to I'm completely sold on him. Danhausen is over. He has crowds going, you are cursed, right? And it actually worked. So when there's a reason why I think you had to set that up on the first Raw he was on. The first time he says it, he does it to Dom loses the title. You had to do that, right? To make the saying actually mean something, right? Because even with your comedy characters, you need it to mean something. And so 100% happy with how they're using him. I don't even know if I want him to wrestle. I just want him to show up in random places. I would love, every now and then, like in a no-holds-barred match or a weapons match or whatever, people will go under the ring and hornswoggles there. I would love for people to, like, go under the ring and pull out a Danhausen. I think that would be hilarious, right? I think they're using Danhausen the correct way. His merch is selling. You can't go against and argue against that type of success, right? So I'm all for it. And so with that being said, I'm going to declare right now on the Slapping Me Community Show, We Too Deep Entertainment, we are pro Danhausen in this community. At least I am. I would love to know why you guys don't like it. I think it's hilarious. I think this thing they're doing on SmackDown with him and The Miz now is going to be hilarious. I think down the line you can get a Danhausen versus Iguana match. I think there's a lot of potential. Now, Danhausen's not the greatest wrestler, but he doesn't have to be. I think you use him comedically. I think it's fun, hilarious. He'll sell merch. possibly tickets. I think it's fun. I think you can get really interactive with this as well. I know before Raw started tonight, when I'm recording Monday, he went to some of the merchandise stands and started handing out merch. Right? Someone said, "Oh, I want this shirt." He's like, "No, you'll take a Danhausen shirt." And you'll take it, or you are right. Just that level of interaction that I think it's fun. I think it's fun. Right. And here's what it is. It's one of the very few things on pro wrestling television that's a gimmick. And y'all know I love gimmicks and I love characters and all of that, right? So I'm going to declare Danhausen's over with the community. If anyone has any other things they have to say, let me know. We can discuss this in the Discord. But Danhausen, to me, he's over. He's 100% over, in my opinion. So with that, we are now going to go 4th and deep. And I want to start 4th and deep reacting to this video. So we're going to talk about college football real quick. And I'm going to react to this video that I saw about the college football playoffs. It was a clip that was sent to me, and I just want to react to this real quick. And so, without further ado, here we go.
Let's say it straight out. There are not, in any given season in college football, I challenge you for this one,
I triple dog dare you!
Schwartz created a slight breach of etiquette by skipping the triple dare and going right for the throat.
I want you to go back. I want anybody to go back and look over the last 20 years. Do me a favor. Do the research. I'll actually feature it on the show. I'll have you on the show. I'll feature your research. I'll ballyhoo it for you. But in the last 20 years, and I'm just picking 20 years out of the hat, you cannot tell me that there were 24 teams in America that in any given season were not eligible, but possible to win a national championship. It doesn't happen. That's not the way things work, because you have maybe 10 or 12 teams, maybe an outlier here and there that actually could be good. That's why 16 teams makes it. But with 24 teams in the playoff, you're going to have some dogs in there. Oh, wait, I didn't want to do that because I'm a dog lover. You actually have some real bullshit in there, to be honest. I don't want to insult dogs. I love my dogs, okay? But the nonsense that it would be that you would have 24 teams and, hey, this team over here, what's a out of you, is going to go ahead and get a chance to play for a national championship. And then what? Go up against one of the better teams? And meantime, while that game is playing, look back into the houses of everybody who's watching it. Not everybody, but most of the people watching that game with number 197 versus number 2. I'm sorry. It's boring because these teams have no chance whatsoever to actually contend for a national championship. Oh, they're in the mix, but big deal. That doesn't make any difference whatsoever. They're not going to win. It's not going to happen because in a 24-game playoff, what do you got to play? 2, 3, 4, 5, 927 games before you can get to that championship? Can't happen. Indiana's happen only every now and then. It's not going to happen every single season, and you know that to be true. Don't lie to me. So first of all, you've got competitive balance. You won't have 24 teams in a playoff where they will be all good games. There will be some really awful games. Not only that, but there'll be more awful games than ever before. Why? Because you're putting teams in there, at least 8 teams, who have no business being in the playoffs. They're not that good. Their players aren't that good. Their coaches aren't that good. Their facilities aren't that good. It's just the way things happen.
So, I just want to be honest with you. I don't know who that guy is. And it was sent to me by someone who's very anti-college football playoff, who knows that I'm very pro college football playoff. In fact, I'm very pro expanded college football playoff. I've even proposed a 32-team playoff, sort of a March Madness type tournament, right? And I've actually landed on, I think 24 is the best. And so that's why I want to talk about this. First off, college football Division I FBS, the Alabama, the main thing most people watch, right? That right now is at 12. If you go down a division, which is Division I FCS, that's up until this year, North Dakota State, South Dakota State, Illinois State, the Salukis, Idaho, Connecticut, not Yukon, but I'm sorry, not Connecticut, New Hampshire. New Hampshire is who I'm thinking of, the Wildcats. Those type of schools. Montana State. Those are sort of the competitors. FCS Division I does a 24-team playoff. And it works. No one complains ever in that system. It just works. Now, I want to actually address the argument made by this person. And I want to address this simply because I think the argument he just made is the actual bullshit. He called, the games between 1 and seed 1 and 24 bullshit. Well, no, the actual bullshit is that argument he just made. Because that is such an entitled SEC Big Ten argument. The only people who make those arguments are fans of SEC and Big Ten teams and who believe that they are the best. Now, quantitatively, sure, they are the best divisions. But now I want you to understand the argument that people who promote a 2014 playoff are making. It's not about quality of outcome. It's never been about, I think the winner of the Sun Belt should have a national championship. It's never been about that. I've never sat here and said winner of the Sun Belt or winner of the MAC or winner of the Mountain West can win the national championship. That's never been my argument. My argument has always been they put on the helmet in August to win games, and that those wins should mean something. So when they win their division in late November, when they win their conference, in December they should be playing for the opportunity to potentially win the national championship. It's never been about equity. It's never been about equal outcomes. It's always been about equality. It's always been about equal opportunity. I am thoroughly convinced there's 10 divisions in FBS football. I'm convinced all 10 of them should have an opportunity to win the national championship, right? And sure, our rating is going to suck for some of the games. Sure, but that's never been an issue when it comes to watching March Madness at 2:30 in the afternoon when it's the 2-seed Duke Blue Devils versus the 15-seed Lehigh Golden Eagles or Flashes or whatever they're called. I still remember that game because I had Duke going to the final. I had Duke winning the national championship, I believe, that year when Lehigh beat them, the 15 beating the 2, right? And everyone said Duke's best. There's no reason to watch, right? And how many people do you think actually watched that game, right? Sure, ratings are going to be down right? But understand, just this past year, James Madison got in, played Oregon, had averaged around 4.4 million viewers, peaked at about 7 million while going up against the NFL playoffs. Or not the NFL playoffs. They went up against an NFL game. I think it was a Christmas week game or the week before Christmas. Anyway, I mean, no. It was a Saturday. What week was that? It would have been the week of Christmas, but that Saturday, because they had some games, I think, that week. One of the last weeks of the NFL regular season, and they had, I think it was like the Chiefs and Chargers or something on at the same time. And obviously the NFL is going to dominate, right? But at a 4:30 kickoff on a Saturday to peak at 7 million viewers, sure, not the greatest, sure. But I thought decent viewership was a decent viewership number, considering all the circumstances surrounding it. I just think that argument of there's not 24 teams who can win. You're right. But if we're going to use that argument, and you're of the belief that there's only 8 teams who can win the national championship, then why do you say 16 would work best? Or why do they think 12 would work best? Because let's just go back to just 2. That's the top 2 teams in the AP ranking at the end of the year. If it's all about that, just do that. But here's the problem. Who's to say that the top 2 teams are actually the top 2 teams? Who's to say that the ratings aren't biased? Okay, so we can go back to the BCS computer. Well, that BCS computer is also somewhat biased. The best way to determine, right, the best way I want to use this is go to the NFL. In August of 2025, how many people had the New England Patriots in the Super Bowl? I think I might have been the only one. I think I might have been the only one saying the Patriots were going to the Super Bowl. But the Patriots made it. They were probably the worst team in the playoffs from a roster standpoint. But I had us in the playoffs before the season even started. Because I understand that football it's not about who the best team is from a talent standpoint. It's about any given Saturday. It's about any given football game. Things can happen. And if there's the possibility that an Appalachian State wins the Sun Belt and beats up a Big Ten team or an SEC team, that's such a great story. And if we stopped these BS arguments from happening, and the gatekeeping from the Big Ten elite and the SEC elite, if we just stopped all of that and actually called out the elitist gatekeeping narrative that they push and recognize that everyone loves a Cinderella story. And so it's not about, oh, well, JMU can win the national championship. Okay, that's never been about it. But what if JMU showed up in Eugene, Oregon and beat them? Very slim chance. But what if they beat Oregon and they went on, and I think they went to play Texas Tech after, if I remember correctly. And what if JMU then went into that game and beat Texas Tech? And then went on to play Indiana and beat Indiana in a thriller. And went to the national championship. Like, imagine that happening. And a team who 2 weeks left in the regular season was not predicted to get in, but by the slimmest of margins, really because Virginia loses to Duke. So JMU even needed more help from an even bigger Cinderella story. And Duke, right? Like just imagine that story, right? And I just, why would we take that away from the potential? All I'm saying is the 10 conference champions, they put on their helmets in the summer or in the spring. They're about to go into spring workouts, all with the same goal to win every single game they're about to play. And all I'm saying is, if the goal for JMU this year is just to repeat winning the Sun Belt, they're not thinking big enough. Their goal this year should not just to be not just to win the Sun Belt, right? And I just don't think it's necessarily fair or equal And by equal, I mean opportunity-wise, not outcome-wise, opportunity-wise. I don't think it's necessarily fair or equal for Central Michigan or Eastern Michigan or anyone in the MAC or the Mountain West or to put on their helmets come August, week 1, and essentially say, we're playing out here for no reason. We're never going to win the national championship. There's virtually zero reason we're here. Because everyone's goal should be at the end of the year to win the championship. That's why you play the game. I don't know. That's the way that I think of this. I would love to know what you guys got to say. With that being said, let's switch over back to the NFL. The first day of legal tampering started today at noon. And so far through the first 9 hours, we're not going to go through every deal. And we're probably not even really going to go through any of them. I more so just want to talk about the Patriots. I really do. And because I think that's the biggest fan base right now that's kind of freaking out. It's my team, the Patriots. Guys, I think we need to calm down. I really do. I mean, I could be butthurt and I could try to say the clickbaity things. Guys, we're fine. We knew what was going to happen. We knew we weren't going to spend money this year. And we knew this because Vrabel and Elliott Wolf said in their press conferences post-Super Bowl before free agency that, yeah, we got to draft better. Now, there's still some valuable talent out there. Now, I don't know. It's been about 2 hours since I last checked any deals. But there's still some decent players that is available out there. And so I think as a Patriots fan, I'm not hitting the red button freaking out yet. Do I think we need to do better and to get better at certain positions? Sure, but we got our pass rusher, which tells me that we're not going after edge rusher first round. I think people need to realize that development of a lot of these positions happen through the draft, especially with that first round pick that you can keep for 5 years now if they turn out well. Right? But the Patriots have always been the person or the team, the organization, since Rob Kraft has owned it, we've always been the team that drafted well or not drafted well, but with our first or second round picks, either they take a team deal where we never really spent money with them. So we never, it's always been about developmental players and role players, and I think that's the way we're going to continue to run, and I don't hate it. Especially the receiver position. Everyone had that as a top need, and I went into today with, we have Pop Douglas, we have Kayshon Boutte, we have Kyle Williams, we have Matt Collins. Excuse me. Nothing that stands out on paper. And then there's always been in the back of my mind, once Stephon Diggs gets cleared or whatever, we find out about his legal issues that will bring him back at a cheaper contract. That's always been in the back of my mind of what we're going to do since we released him. And so let's say we go into the season with Stephon Diggs, Kayshon Boutte, Pop Douglas, Matt Collins, Kyle Williams, Hunter Henry at tight end, draft another tight end to play backup, or use Jack Westover, who we tendered. Right? You get the point that I'm trying to say. I don't think that that's necessarily bad. I don't. I think our areas that we needed to improve on were pass rush. I don't know if we got much better, but we got better than what we had. We need another linebacker, I think we'll get. We need a safety. Either re-sign Jalen Hawkins or sign someone else or draft someone else. And we need an offensive line. We need one interior guy and a right tackle to replace Morgan Moses. And I don't know why the Patriot fan base is a bunch of panicking right now. Just panicking over, oh, we didn't get this guy, or we didn't get this guy. We're not spending money on this guy. Don't worry. Don't worry. I've always trusted our team. I really have. And we'll see what happens. And I'm not going to sit out here and say we're going to win 14 games again this year and make the playoffs. Realistically, with the schedule we have, I think we're going 8-9 this year. Just realistically. I think that's where we're going to end up. And I think that's fine. We're way ahead of schedule from a developmental standpoint. And I don't know, I'm not going to panic. I think we've done fine so far. We'll see what day 2 has to bring. We'll see what the rest of this week. Deals aren't technically official till Wednesday anyway. I also think that the Patriots have a trade in mind that they're working on at the receiver position. I don't know if it's A.J. Brown or Jordan Addison or Brian Thomas or who it is. Maybe when Brandon Ayuk gets released on Wednesday, when the official new year starts, maybe we go after him. I think it'd be very interesting. But I'm not going to panic. I think we're fine. I really do. I think we're fine. Some of the other big deals, Kenneth Walker to the Chiefs is a really good deal. Able to fix that running game, which they really haven't been able to fix in a while. Travis Kelce comes back. I'm a little worried about their secondary because both of their guys that they had, McDuffie and Jalen Watson, I think was his name, both now on the Rams. The Rams said, you know what, we really sucked in our secondary last year. Let's go fix that. And they're pretty the Raiders got some good players. I don't know how good that'll be, on the field, but from a paper standpoint, they've done good. The Jets somehow found some money. I think some of these deals are pretty interesting. I really do. But I think the biggest interesting one that I've seen transition stuff that's happened is the Dolphins and their quarterback situation. They're paying $99 million for Tua this year. He's not even on the team. They're going to take the large buyout, large dead cap hit, and then they went and signed Malik Willis for like $20 million a year for the next 3 years to be their starter, which, again, I don't necessarily know how I feel about that. Malik Willis, I don't think is necessarily all that good. It would not surprise me if they could go after another player, if it's Romeo Doubs, because he played with Willis on the Packers. Some of the other, I think the Texans really didn't make much of a splash until they got Reed Blankenship. I think that's good for them. Nakobe Dean's on the Raiders. The Raiders got Tyler Lindenbaum, which is who I really wanted. A good deal for them. Isaiah Likely went up to the Giants. A lot of former ex-Ravens went up to the Giants with Harbaugh. Some good deals that have happened. I think a lot of teams potentially got better. I don't think the Patriots got better, but what I think they did was say we have a plan, and I hope they get better through the draft and the rest of free agency. But I think they have a plan. I really trust that front office right now. We'll see how much that trust comes back to bite me in the butt. But I don't know. I think there's moves to be made that they're going to make over the next few days through the draft. I'm not going to put an end to the A.J. Brown deal until, the season starts. I think he's going to end up a Patriot one of these days before the season starts. Possibly we got to wait to June 1st or after June 1st. Possibly we'll see what that looks like for my cap situation with the Eagles. And then, this is also the day where people get overpaid. I think Jalen Phillips to the Panthers was a needed play for the Panthers, but definitely was an overpay, I believe. The Ravens trading for Max Crosby, I think it's an overpay. I don't think he's all that good. Just going to be honest with you. So, I don't know. We'll see what we got happening moving forward with the Patriots. Which then takes me to the final segment of the show, and that is questions from the Discord. The first one, using WWE talent, create a starting offense and defense for a football team. The catch, you cannot use any wrestlers like Brock or Roman who played college or pro football. This is this is going to be interesting. This took me a minute to think about. So we'll start with quarterback, and I think quarterback is going to be Logan Paul. And here's why. He is a quarterback. He can carry the team on his back. He's confident. He's a little cocky. I think you need that in your quarterback. He's a great athlete, and I think he'd be a good quarterback in this sort of hypothetical situation. My running back, I want someone with speed, but someone who's not, like, small. And by small, I mean, like, skinny. Because if I just wanted a speed dude, right, first off, you really ruined me being able to pick Braun Breaker here, but that's okay. I went Dragon Lee because he's explosive, he's agile, but he's kind of thick, right? So we're going to go Dragon Lee. That's kind of an awkward pick, but I think it could work. Wide receiver 1 would be Montez Ford. Tall, lanky, down the field guy, right? My wide receiver 2 will be Carmelo Hayes. He's more of the route runner, technical type route running wide receiver. And then my wide receiver 3 or my slot would be Kofi Kingston, who has, right, he's going to run the quick, slants and drag routes or cross routes across the field, right? My tight end will be Damian Priest. Strong blocking ability. He's big. He's a big target, right? Damian Priest. My offensive line, my left tackle. So this is going to be my blindside blocker. He's the most important player on the offensive line. Omos, 7'3", big-bodied. Omos played basketball. He did not play football, so this counts. 7'3", left tackle. My left guard right beside Omos will be Otis. He's he's built like an offensive lineman, right? And he'll play there. My center, this is an awkward pick, but it's because of his size. He's not necessarily built like big, like husky, but Chad Gable, because he's smart. The center's typically the guy who runs the whole offense. He knows all he's calling who to block and everything, right? Chad Gable's that technical sort of smart, intelligent player who's also pretty strong, and you could build some weight on him as well, right? My right guard, Sheamus, and my right tackle is Drew McIntyre. On the defense, we're going to run a 4-3 defense. So my 2 defensive ends, Gunther and Obafemi. Obafemi played college track and field. He was not a football player. So Oba and Gunther on the ends. On the interior defensive line, the tackles will be Bronson Reed and Ivar from the Viking Raiders. My linebackers. In the middle, the sort of captain of the defense, we're going to run CM Punk. Sort of locker room leader guy. Not the best player. Your best linebacker is typically not your middle linebacker unless you're Luke Kuechly. But I don't even think Luke played middle. I could be wrong. I don't actually know. But this is more of just your captain, right? My outside, strong side linebacker will be Ilya Dragunov. And I like him because he just has a nonstop motor. He's aggressive. He's willing to make the hits that are needed. On the other side linebacker, the weak side linebacker, we never said that we had to just stick to men here, so we're putting Rhea Ripley on the field. I feel like she would terrorize an offense. On the secondary, my cornerback one will be AJ Styles. I know he's technically retired, but we're using him for this. Will be AJ Styles. He has some good reaction speed and agility. My cornerback 2 on the other side, we're going back up the women well here for a minute and using Bianca Belair because she is a track star. She has that speed. My free safety, which is typically the guy who plays on the weak side of the field, more center of the field, smarter guy, doesn't necessarily have to be all that physical, Finn Balor. And then my strong side safety will be Jay Uso, who I think could put a licking on somebody. So there you go. There is your WWE talent football team. B-Master comes in and sets up the context. So basically, Thea Hale went on Instagram to address her concerns and broke down crying because some of the comments said about her. My question is, should wrestlers have thick skin and brush it off, or should they just turn off the comments, basically, right? So first thing, I don't know what's going on with Thea. I don't pay attention to the drama, don't care. To answer the question, I think it's a mixture of both. I think if you're a public person and you're in the public and you're known to the public, you need to have a little bit thicker skin, but that doesn't mean that you just can't have emotions. And that doesn't mean that people can just go off online and be dickheads to you, right? So I think it's a little bit of both. You need a little bit thicker skin, but I also got to say, wrestling fans got to do better as well. B-Master also asked, WrestleMania is coming up soon, which also means other wrestling events will also be happening in the area. If every promotion wanted to work together and be on TV at WrestleMania, what would be some dream matches you'd like to see? Wavy D added a add-on to this question about like using other promotion stories and what stories would I like to see. I responded to when Wavy D posted this, and I think y'all are going to be very disappointed with my answer to this question, and here's why. Y'all know me, I don't give two absolute craps about dream matches, and I don't even know what's going on outside. I don't even really know what's going on in WWE right now. For me to answer this question I would require a lot of research. I don't know what's going on in the world of wrestling right now. I really don't. And so I know this seems like a cop-out answer, but I'm not a dream match dude, even if I knew what was going on. I don't have dream matches. I just don't. I think the concept of a dream match is kind of a little dorky, in my opinion now. I just got to be honest. I'm at the point where, as I was contemplating this question, I recognized I don't even know if I would call myself a wrestling fan anymore. I'm a sports entertainment fan. And what I mean by that is I just want to see good storytelling. I don't necessarily care about the matches all that much. I don't care about the physical aspect of wrestling. If we had something like what I do with Wetoodeep Pro Wrestling, where it was promo, storyline, melodrama, Days of Our Life, soap opera type TV, centered around a wrestling promotion, I would watch that in a heartbeat over modern wrestling. Like, go on Netflix and watch the show Heels, with Stephen Amell and all of them. I only watched the first season. They just put season 2 on Netflix a few months ago, and I haven't got around to watching it because I canceled Netflix. But I loved season 1 of Heels. And just going to be honest with you, if we had a promotion that ran like that, where it was like storyline sort of filmed, and I don't know, I feel like we need something like that. That's not live in an arena with a crowd that hijacks things, but something that is more of a television show. I'd watch that in a heartbeat over modern wrestling right now. I'm just going to be honest with you. I don't have dream matches, right? I just don't. I don't care that much about it at this point. I know that sounds like a cop-out answer, but that's how I feel right now. B Master then goes on and says everyone on the WrestleMania card is sick and can't perform, and you have to rewrite WrestleMania. How would you do so? Keep in mind all of the injured wrestlers. First of all, I don't even know who's fucking injured. I'm sorry that I feel like I'm repeating myself on this answer. I don't know who's injured. I don't know who's, not hurt, on the bench, not being used. I think I promised last week I would do like a spring cleaning of the roster. I forgot to do that. So we'll do that next week. 100%. I wrote it down. We're going to do that next week. And it's probably going to be the majority of the in the rope segment is me doing that. But so here's what I would say. If we came to a situation to where the WrestleMania card was built, we're the week of the event, everyone on the card is sick and can't perform. I think as a company, the best thing for you to do is to just pivot. I would just use NXT. I'm assuming the NXT guys and gals aren't on the road with everyone. So I'm just creating an NXT event. Or in a realistic situation, I'm just saying, hey, I know you guys paid a lot of money for this, but I don't think they'll move the event or change the time. So the easiest thing for me to say would be, we're just going to put on, we'll announce that everyone's sick. We're doing an NXT show at WrestleMania. Maybe, we'll bring some TNA guys in. I don't necessarily know what you do in this situation. I really just don't know. I don't have matches off the top of my head that I would book, to be honest with you. Because no matter what happens, like it's not going to flow well with the TV programming. And so part of me says, like, you just go in, and I would just say, hey, we're sick. We're going to have to move WrestleMania to a different day. That's what I would do, just personally as a company. Like, hey, Vegas is the next available date for WrestleMania is in 2 weeks, and everyone should be better by then. So that's when we're going to do it. Whoever bought tickets, you can keep it. And this, that, and the third, right? If you want to do refunds, we'll refund you or whatever, right? I mean, that's a pretty crappy situation to be in. I personally, I don't think there's a way you can actually book something that's meaningful to do that. The only other option is to use NXT and AAA and TNA. And again, but there's no real dream matches or matches that I have in my head. I would just throw something together. Like, it didn't even have to make sense at that point. Like, it won't have to make sense. I would just throw things together. I possibly even would, there are indie stars there. Hey, you want to be in a WrestleMania match? We just got to throw a show together, right? So I will say this for those two questions. If I did an interview around this time last year with a wrestler named Vicious Vicky. She's going to be in Vegas this week or this year for WrestleCade or whatever that the conference is out there. And so I would put her on the card because I think she's earned it and deserved it. And that's probably what I would do. I'd go to NXT, whoever's there for NXT, whoever's in the area, possibly grab some indie stars and say, hey, for one night, we'll pay you this amount. Come be on WrestleMania. I don't know. That's a pretty interesting situation to be in. Kara came in, and we're going to end with hers because she said, give us your Wetoodeep agreement or disagreement with each of these following statements. And this is how we're going to end the show. So we'll start with this. Logan Paul is defending the business. Any other wrestler would have been praised. It's just popular to find anything to hate. Yeah, Logan Paul's a hateable guy. I don't hate him. I think he's the greatest thing in the business right now. Probably should be fighting for a world championship. I'm just going to be honest. I agree with that statement. Second statement, and this one is the one that I originally was going to talk about in the ring segment, but she asked this question, so we'll just go ahead and talk about it here. Randy versus Cody at WrestleMania made more sense story-wise than Drew versus Cody would have ever been. WWE made the right choice. 100% agree. And the internet fans want to find something to complain about. That's all the complaining is. Why to give Drew the title if he was just going to drop it? Here's why. Because we're building towards something with Drew versus Nick Aldis. At least that's the logical way that you could turn this. That's the way I would do it. I think that's what we're building to. Drew McIntyre. But secondly, and I know we all don't have this background information, Drew was about to go film a movie. I think he's about to go film Highlander or something like that after Mania. So this is, a good way to do this. But also, you can build Randy versus Cody through SummerSlam. Maybe even after that. I think this would be a great way to get Cody to turn heel. That way, next Mania, Cody is in a heel position. Possibly against like a Sami Zayn or a Roman or a Rock or something along that line. Get Randy number 15 in the process. Yeah, I 100% agree. Randy versus Cody is the better match. Next statement, Sol Ruka is headed for the main roster and is going to make Zarya on the way out of NXT. Yeah, 100%. She's not winning the title. This whole turn, it was all about making Zarya, the championship level material that she is already, but putting the Sol Ruka stamp of approval on it. So what I think happens at the Houston show, I do think Sol's going to win the title. And I think Zarya is going to come after it and stand and deliver. Sol will drop the title just a few weeks later to Zarya. And then Sol is going to go up to the main roster. I 100% agree with that statement as well. Switching to football, the Chiefs have gotten dangerous again by signing Kenneth Walker III. Seattle made a huge mistake on top of the 3 draft picks Kansas City gets from the L.A. McDuffie trade. Here's a crazy situation as well. The Chiefs still pick 9. They could theoretically draft Jeremiah Love out of Notre Dame and have a backfield of Kenneth Walker and Jeremiah Love. Because here's the thing with Kenneth Walker. I think he was only as effective as he was in Seattle because you had Charbonnet to split time with him. Why not do the same thing? Why not replicate that in Kansas City and draft Jeremiah Love? Then you get the Rams' first-round pick this year as well, which is like, well, the Rams had 2, so they had 14 or 15 or something around there, and then they had like a pick in the mid to late 20s. So then you can go and add another player of need at that pick. The Chiefs are going to be very dangerous this year. I agree with that statement. I also think there's a situation where on Wednesday when Tyreek Hill officially gets released, that the Chiefs are going to sign them. The Chiefs added defensive tackle Kyrus Tonga, from the Patriots, to put right next to Chris Jones. That defense got better, a little bit better on the front end. I'm still a little shaky about the secondary, getting rid of both of your 2 members of your secondary. But I think that's an easy fix. I do. I think that's an easy fix you can fix in the draft. I do. So the Chiefs are very dangerous right now. And if I had to make a pick prediction right now, Rams-Chiefs Super Bowl is my prediction. Next statement. Players who do not honor their contracts with their team should not play another snap of football unless they mend things with the franchise or compensate the team. Like the pursuing team that wants to play or offers a team a comp pick. I say this because any player that wants to go anywhere else could just stop showing and wait for their release. I'm going to have to disagree with this one. I think I don't really know how to necessarily explain my thoughts on this question. But I just the way that immediate reaction to it without really coming as I'm sort of processing it. This is sort of I disagree. It's sort of this right off the tongue, right off the top of the head, just reading it. I would disagree. Okay. So I'll say this. I think I disagree because it assumes that the contract or that contracts in pro sports are one-sided obligations that only bind to the player. When in reality they're part of a negotiated labor system where both sides sort of have some sort of leverage. So like in the NFL, teams routinely release players before the end of their contract or restructure deals or trade. And I don't think that's necessarily what you're talking about by not honoring their contracts. I just think like you can't play again until you repay your team sort of removes any leverage that a player has when negotiating a contract. And so I also think like, okay, if a player, so let's take A.J. Brown for an example, right? A.J. Brown really wants to be traded. There is rumors he may not show up at camp for the Eagles this year, and to which the Eagles will fine him. I think that's more than enough punishment. I think there are at certain times, certain situations where the players are in the right to want to hold out, or, if negotiations aren't going their way, to be re-signed. Right? I think there's a lot more nuance to this statement than just saying, well, you're not honoring your contract, therefore you don't ever get to play again until you make things right. So I'm going to have to disagree with that statement. She says Vegas should create their own franchises instead of stealing them from the Bay Area. She's talking about the Raiders and now the Oakland Athletics moving to Vegas, I believe, starting this year. I think it may have even started last year. I see it. I understand it. I think the problem with that is, and I think we have to realize why they moved to those areas. So I'm actually say this. I'm going to disagree with this statement as well, because of the reason why they moved. I think first off, just from a tourist attraction area, Vegas is better. For the league, for the teams, Vegas is just better. It just has to be said. But also, the idea of, well, Vegas needs to have a expansion team if they ever want sports. I mean, Vegas is a top, I think, 10 most important city in America in terms of entertainment and all of that, right? So if you were eventually going to get a team in that area, right? And so, but not every league wants to expand. And the Bay Area really didn't want the teams all that often or all that much, apparently, since they weren't willing to pay for a stadium or negotiate new stadium terms. So now, like, if the Golden State Warriors left and went to Vegas, I think we would have a point. I think, especially with the two teams that have done it so far, I'm gonna have to disagree with it. I don't see an issue with Vegas taking them. Next one, the Max Crosby trade was objectively a bad trade, considering the Raiders are going for good talent and the Ravens' offense have deteriorated, with offensive talent signing elsewhere. I'm gonna agree, but I'm also going to say it was just we could have stopped at the Max Crosby trade was an objectively bad trade, and then stopped there, Because it doesn't matter that the Raiders got better and that the Ravens are getting worse on offense. It was an objectively bad trade because they're paying a lot of money and some draft pick compensation for a man who has a lot of injury issues. I think they're paying like $30 million a year for him. They're paying in draft capital, right? I think they traded pick 14. That's a lot of money right there. I don't understand. I think people need to realize, like, if I was a GM, I'm not trading my first round pick, or I'm very rarely trading out of the first round, because what the first round offers isn't just a top caliber player, but is a top caliber player with the ability to hold them for an extra year if I pick up the 5th-year option. And so that's where a lot of your development happens. For example, if I was the New England Patriots at 31 and Blake Miller at offensive tackle, who's a natural right tackle, if Blake Miller is there at 31, I would pick Blake Miller. Why? He's not going to play year one in his year, but he's right. Morgan Moses would play that position, but Morgan Moses is about to retire, and I could place Blake Miller behind him, give him a lot of snaps in practice and preseason, and Morgan Moses plays majority of the snaps in the regular season, and in 2 or 3 seasons when Morgan Moses is gone, Blake Miller's ready, and we have a good guy at right tackle who's ready to step in, and I can hold Blake Miller for the 5th year if he turns out to be a really good player, right? Or, say we go and address our wide receiver need with someone like Chris Bell out of Louisville. Well, we now have a 5th-year option that we could hold. That's why, like in the A.J. Brown trade, we'll just trade 31. No, because it's not just almost a second-round pick. Because here's what that 31 has over 33 is that 5th-year option, right? So it's not almost a second. No, it's a first, and it carries a lot more value than a second-round pick does. So Max Crosby trade was just bad objectively from the beginning, and I hope Baltimore suffers because of it. It was just a stupid trade. And then her final question, and finally, lettuce on burgers adds nothing, and I will agree with that. With that being said, I do like lettuce on my burger because I kind of like toppings. I think what it adds is a visual appeal of this might have a little bit of health nutrient to it. It doesn't add anything really nutritionally or anything. Lettuce is good at times, right, on a burger, right? Now, it depends on what type of lettuce you're using. But theoretically, for this question, I would agree with the statement. It adds nothing to it, though I like it on there. So, yeah. But that's the show. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Thank you all for watching. I'm Wetoodeep, and until next week, I will see you guys back here on the Slapping Meat Community Show.
So hit that subscribe, come along for the ride, whether it's NXT or NFL time. Going in the ropes and 4th and deep, Slapping Meat Community every Tuesday. Hope and immunity, yeah. Immunity, yeah. Every Tuesday, every Tuesday. Hope and immunity, yeah. Immunity, yeah. Every Tuesday.